Large order of mulch you're going to make for this weekend?
I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Education for the School District of Baraboo to order for Monday, May the 6th, 2013, with roll call. Mr. Cummings, Mr. McNevin, Mr. Meering, Mr. Mortimer, Ms. Riley, Mr. Vidro, and Vodak here. Continue with the pledge. The flag is behind the counter. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would entertain a motion for the approval of the board minutes from the April the 2nd, 2013 meeting.
Second.
Motion by McNevin, seconded by Cummings. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to the 2013-2014 board committees and representatives. The committees, as I'm going to present to the board tonight for approval. I'll go through them one at a time. Pretty simple. Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation, chaired by Mr. Cummings. Committee members Mortimer and Vodak. The Finance Committee, chaired by Mr. McNevin. Finance Committee members Cummings and Mortimer. Personnel Committee, chaired by Vodak. Committee members of Personnel, McNevin and Vidro. And Policy and Educational Legislation Committee, chaired by Mr. Meering, with board members and committee members Riley and Vidro. The CISA representative, Mr. Meering, and the WASB Convention delegate, Mr. Meering, and the alternate, Ms. Riley. Would entertain a motion to approve that.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Vidro, seconded by Mortimer. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to correspondence, of which I have none to admit. Any other board members with correspondence? Administrative correspondence?
I have 3 pieces I'd like to share tonight. I believe both Kevin and myself received a letter from Fred Clark about Baraboo's participation in the Education Leaders Summit. That was on April 23rd, and there are comments attached that were provided by the attendees that evening, so I'll pass that around for you to take a look at. Not really correspondence, but I wanted to highlight the Achieving Innovation and Learning for All Wisconsin Students. It was a special education conference held in the Dells last week, and Danny and Lori and I presented on building district capacity and some of the strategies that we're using as a school district. The coaching model, the alignment of resources, the PLC framework, to name a few. We had a pretty good crowd of about 65 directors of special ed from across the state. So that session is highlighted on page 3 if you want to take a look at that. And I saved the best for last. Just this afternoon, we were notified that one of our teachers is one of 5 teachers selected from the U.S. As using an innovative Chromebook Google Apps for Education. So the representative from Google for Education contacted us. The teacher is Lenore Zeller. She'll be participating in a Google Hangout to have an hour discussion conversation of how she's using those digital tools in her special education classroom. The Google Hangout, if you don't know, is a global conversation where there are a few participants, but many people can listen in on that, thousands. So I will forward that link to you. The congratulatory email is here, and it talks about the great work that she's doing in that capacity. So 1 out of 5 U.S. application, I think that's outstanding.
In addition, I think we should commend Matt Kellen, our Director of Educational Technology, who has built the platform
Absolutely.
for this to be able to happen, and validating the board's support of that focus on 21st century learning.
Any other administrative correspondence? Hearing none brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled Public Viewpoints. Do we have anyone here for public viewpoints tonight? Do we have any public viewpoints tonight? We've got a microphone set up down at the end of the table if you'd be so kind as to state your name.
My name is Erin Rogers. I'm here because you can probably hear me. Last Monday on the 29th, my son was involved in an incident on the school bus where he was very closely injured from another child. So we're here tonight just to request maybe some rethinking about providing some supervision on our special ed buses. It's the driver's responsibility to be safely driving our children, not constantly looking up in the mirror and making sure that our children aren't being harmed. So again, like, you know, I understand budgets and that it's not there, but Chromebooks are great and I'm really happy about that, but also as the safety of our children on our bus, and I'm concerned for all of their safety. Even, you know, my child could act out too, and I don't want him to be on the other side of what happened, so. And I think I've sent an email, and I hope you guys got that and briefed on.
I want to personally thank you for taking the time to communicate with the district administrator and all of us. She did forward your email. As a former school bus driver of the special ed route in 1972, I do understand some of the issues of trying to be both a driver of a bus and manage young children on the bus. So thank you very much for being here tonight and sharing that with us.
Yes.
Any further public viewpoint? Any further public viewpoint? Just a comment, Erin. I know that the administration is working on that. Feel free to be in touch with the rest of the board as a follow-up. I think we all take the situation very seriously, and we're looking forward to finding a solution. So please don't think that your time spent here was for naught. Okay?
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled Staff and Student Recognition. And for that, I will turn to Ms. Ritzenbaum.
We have Tessa Faga here tonight from Al Behrman School, along with some students that we would like to recognize for their math accomplishments, and so I'll let you introduce them.
Go over here.
We can actually see you better if you stand up there. I know you have to
Walk a little ways.
also makes for a better picture.
Yes, it does.
All right, I am here as a GT coach for the elementary level at Al Behrman Elementary, and with me I have some fourth graders. We got to go to Math 24 competition. It was a regional competition actually, and compete against other schools in our region. So there was like Sauk, Wanakee was there, us, DeForest, and many other schools in that surrounding area. And in fourth grade we did so, in both grade levels, fourth and fifth grade we did very, very well. In fifth grade we had the first in Baraboo person was Sam Multer, who was in my class at Abe, but he wasn't able to come today. Then first in Baraboo, which is fourth grade, was Naomi Pelland, who was also not able to come today. She's in a play, she's busy with lots of things. So, and then we had these three. It was so wonderful. The top 4 of the whole region in fourth grade were from Baraboo, which is wonderful. So we should, number one, give these guys a round of applause. So fourth place at the competition was Kennedy. She received a trophy and was fourth place winner. And third place was Kayla. She also received a trophy. Second place was Max, and Naomi Pelland was our first place winner of the whole region in Math 24. So they did a great job. I'm not sure about these two. They're from North Freedom, but Naomi is from my school, and she's already got the 5th grade game. Came and asked me questions about it. She's getting ready for next year's competition. So they're really a bunch of go-getters doing so well in school and math in general. So we're really, really proud of them and glad that we had the opportunity to go to Madison and even get some ice cream along the way.
Well, I love your trophies. Those are really awesome. I don't have a trophy for you, but I do have a medallion. It says Honors for Excellence. It has the T-bird colors. So I'm going to present you with that, and we're so proud of the way that you represented the Baraboo School District. And we look forward to hearing more good news about you in the future. Congratulations. 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 And I'm going to give you these two for the two that weren't here. And tonight you're going to hear about not only how these math students are excelling, but another communication piece that we received that's great news for our district to showcase the wonderful work that the teachers and our students are doing. And Tessa, thank you for taking on the role of the GT coach, which is a fairly new leadership role, and I think Math 24 is such an excellent opportunity for our students, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Mention one thing, I did go with Brian Ashbeck, who is another GT coach, and he wasn't able to make it tonight. And the last thing I do want to say is not only our teachers, these students and parents, but our whole community is doing a great job raising these kids, because one of the proctors there said to me that these fourth graders were the most well-behaved, best-mannered students in the whole Math 24 competition. So not only great mathematicians, but great kids all around. So good job,
Brings us to the portion of agenda entitled Reports, and under Reports tonight we have the facility phase 2 update. The core planning team will be meeting on Wednesday. Kind of to lead into that, the Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation Committee is taking a tour of the city building prior to that core planning team meeting on Wednesday. So we'll have further information from that.
Take your phone so you don't get lost.
We have been working on getting the word out in regards to the listening sessions, community workshops that are upcoming. We have some posters. I can pass them around.
The top one is the postcard that will be going out front and back, and then the other two are the flyers.
Is that what size it is?
No. I think it's 5. Is it 5 by 8 or something?
Probably 2 stamps with it.
It'll get your attention.
Going to everybody in the school district then, or?
Yes. And a few extra just because of how the mail routes go. So.
And if anybody wants a poster for their closest laundry facility or gathering place, we can certainly come up with 2 sizes, small and large. The workshop number 1 is scheduled for the 21st of May. That will be at the Civic Center at 10:30 in the morning. That's in room 14. And then the second one will be the 3rd of June at 6 p.m. at the middle school. And the evening one, we are going to be providing child care. So if anybody has kids, wants to come, doesn't have a babysitter for the night or in-laws that can watch them, feel free to bring them, and we will take care of them for the duration of that meeting. Again, that's the 21st of May and the 3rd of June, and there will be hopefully much more feedback to provide to the board moving forward.
Can I say one more thing, Kevin?
Certainly.
There's also been a lot of work done on the website. Matt Pelland has been working very closely with C.G. Schmidt. So when you go on the main page under Hot Topics, the very first thing will be the community workshop. And we have that T-Bird logo that's been part of a lot of the communications. And you just click on that and it takes you to the facility page, which we've updated and organized a little bit better. So.
Mr. McNevin, you have anything you care to add?
No.
Dr. Ritzenteller, you have anything you care to add? Brings us to continuous school improvement, which brings us to the upcoming graduation requirements. And we previously approved an increase in the credit requirements for graduation, so not sure.
And I think Bill did talk to this at an earlier meeting, so this is just kind of a review of what that proposal includes. Does the board have any questions regarding the financial literacy piece or the online learning component?
Can you speak to the online learning component a little bit?
Sure.
It seems a little nebulous to me.
Sure. Basically, what we looked at was trying to identify what we wanted an online requirement to look like. Okay, and there's a couple different ways in which that can look. One of which it can be an online course. So it could be a course that we offer through the Wisconsin eSchool Network as one option. The other thing could be possibly where students take a course where they might take it from a post-secondary institution. They might take it over the course of the summer, which we didn't provide a whole lot of specifics or restraints on it because we want to try to keep it flexible. And then there's also the idea more and more these days of the blended learning environment or blended courses. So now we have a situation where instead of it just being a course that's strictly online, where there's absolutely no face-to-face interaction with the course member, but now you have a chance to have a class where there's a blended component, which we could offer here, and many of our teachers already do it to a certain degree, where there's the face-to-face component that takes place, but they deliver a portion of the course through an online platform. So for example, they might use a website in which students might have to go and interact after doing some readings or so forth as part of their homework assignment for the class. They might have to go through and respond and engage in a discussion board to talk about that particular assignment. That's becoming more and more prevalent, particularly in post-secondary education, where it gives students a chance to interact with their peers where it might not be realistic to do so on a regular day-by-day basis. So when talking with Rhonda Kophammer when she was still employed by us back in the fall, one of the things that she identified from all her work and working with her colleagues in the online environment is that typically 15 hours tends to be what's identified as being online rich. And so it has to be a situation where students are either receiving some sort of instruction via online, whether it's via research, whether it's for assessment, whether it's communication or collaboration. So getting students used to the idea that, you know, it's not just a face-to-face instructional model, but rather there can be face-to-face, but there's also a chance to interact in a different way. So I really think it kind of contributes to that 21st century learning that we talk a lot about and preparing our students for 21st century learning. And so that's why it's been left somewhat nebulous and somewhat open-ended so that there's that degree of interpretation that we can have for that. We have not identified any courses yet that are offered here currently at BHS that would fit that mold. We will do that moving forward, and that will include involvement.
That was my follow-up question. So
Yeah.
how do you evaluate the quality of that credit when there's such a wide variety and possibility? I mean, are we approving those prior to, or
Yes.
is that?
Yes, that would be done ahead of time, and that would be something that would involve a committee that we put together. It would include not only staff, but also some students, some parents, all right, anybody who might be interested in doing that so that we can get some input as far as so that we're all kind of calibrated on the same page as far as what we're looking for. Because again, you know, so long as it addresses those 15 hours, and we already have some classes that I believe do that and others that could do that if they made some modifications. You know, Damian Beth's a great example. You know, when he's going through and teaching geometry, he uses Edmodo. So he's able to have students go in and engage in an online fashion for portions of the course. And so long as that's being sustained over the course of the semester and there's at least 15 hours of time, you know, that students have to devote to that. And of course, that's based on what he feels they need to be doing in order to be successful. Then that's something that we would view as an online rich course.
I think it's an excellent idea. I think as you've identified, the future currently and post-secondary education is major universities offering online courses that are blended, that are global. If we want to prepare our high school students for what they will experience in college, this is a great step up, I believe.
One question, it's a little bit, but along the same track. We do have somebody we're trying to hire at this point. Have we had many applicants for that position?
We are performing screening interviews for that position on Thursday morning.
Yes.
So I would imagine that the following week, next week, is probably when we'd be doing face-to-face
Yes.
interviews. So we'd probably be looking at perhaps even the next board meeting having a
Perhaps we would
recommendation.
have that recommendation ready.
Me
Yeah, I
too.
mean, part of this is gonna be managing it and having the students being accountable and so forth, so we need to have the right person.
Keep in mind too, any of our instructors who teach online have to go through a training and be certified in that area.
Yeah, I mean, I believe we're doing the right thing. There are issues around the state with many online components, and part of that is that they're not managing it. They're not making the students accountable. They're just basically saying, signing them up, and at the end of the day, they're failing. And that's not the model that we accept.
No, and I think one could argue that the online rich courses actually might provide a better experience for our kids than a
Sure.
pure online course for the very reasons that you're identifying.
Yep.
And we have staff currently in this building that can or will be able to provide that type of blended environment
Yep.
without any additional, you know, resources or so forth, because they're already in some cases doing it.
There are.
So I think in that regard, that kind of, hopefully that'll help satisfy, you know, that concern,
Yeah.
because there are obviously some situations where that's not the best situation for
No,
students.
both, and I'm not saying not here, but I'm saying other places. So that's part of it, is we have to have people, not only the online person that we're bringing in, but obviously the rest of the staff that are teaching those courses.
Yeah. And-
make the students accountable for.
Right. And before I forget, I want to make sure that, everybody's really clear on the fact this is not meant to be an add-on to current graduation requirements. It can be a part of. There can be that double dipping taking place. So, for example, I use Damian Beth in geometry as an example. If he has a class that's viewed as being online rich, all right, the student can take care of their math credit with that as well as their online component. So this is not meant to be something that people have to go through and do just for the sake of jumping through a hoop, but rather for getting the well-rounded experience that they're going to need once they go
A
post-secondary.
different method of getting the same credit.
Right, exactly.
I would entertain a motion from the board to approve the concept of the second phase.
I move to approve it as it's written.
Second.
Having a motion by Mr. Mearing, seconded by Mr. Vijo. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Bloss?
Phase 3 will be coming with service learning in the near future, hopefully.
Okay. Forward to it.
Thank you.
Brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled Ms. Miller. No, I'm sorry. Summary.
We're just gonna give it a name.
Yeah, so on your tables tonight, I provided 2 documents. The first one I'm going to talk about is the one that Mr. Hubble calls the Christmas tree. Looks like this, and I just want to make sure you understand what you're seeing when you look at that data. We're looking at full academic year students who have been in Baraboo for an entire school year, scoring proficient or advanced. And as you look down the left-hand column, you'll see all the grade levels that are assessed, and we have the boxes on top of the state results. So this is a document to allow you to compare our performance to the state results. I color-coded it green to show you where we were at or above state average, and you'll quickly see that we have one area that we need to continue our focused efforts, and that's in the area of reading. You'll see that the yellow represents that we were 1% below the state average in grades 3 and 6. And then I indicated with red where we're significantly below the state, in my opinion, for 4th and 5th grade. So I want to walk you through my summary results, and that's the next document to help you better understand. Because right now you're just looking at attainment, okay? So my 3 key points I want you to keep in mind as we talk about the results is overall gains in both, we're seeing overall gains in both math and reading. Initially, when you look at the Christmas tree document, you might say, really? But I'm going to share with you that in terms of growth, as a district, we are seeing gains in reading. We are performing at or above state averages in all areas except reading, and we continue to focus on reading and writing improvement efforts with that emphasis on early intervention to accelerate our achievement and close gaps. I think it's important to note the context of this data because it takes us back a little ways. This data reflects student attainment from the 11-12 school year, so last school year, because our students take this particular assessment in the fall, in late October and early November of our current school year. So it's a measure of our student attainment from last school year and the years prior. Also, when you look at those percentages of students that are scoring proficient or advanced, you need to keep in mind too that these are new proficiency levels implemented statewide for the first time for the WKCE for math and reading only. So you'll note a difference in percentages between language arts, science, and social studies, which were scores that were not NAEPIs. Reading and math were NAEPIs, it's a verb now, to change our cut scores to be representative of the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Okay, so the summary of our results, we'll start with math. Our mathematics achievement continues among elementary middle school students, but was flat at the high school level. For example, at the elementary level, we had 55.6% of our students proficient or advanced, which is up 5.3 percentage points from last year. At the middle school, we had 51.3% of our students proficient or advanced, and that's up 6.3 percentage points from last year. Even though high school math was flat with 55% proficient or advanced, it's 11 percentage points more than the state average. Overall reading achievement is making slight gains, and with this data, I looked at growth of the same students over time. So looking at students who performed as 3rd graders last year, how they're performing this year as 4th graders, same students. For example, 4th grade scored 2 percentage points higher than last year, 6th grade scored 5 percentage points higher, 7th grade scored 8 percentage points higher, and 8th grade scored 2 percentage points higher. We did experience a dip in the 5th grade with 7 percentage points. And then the 10th grade noted 11 percentage point increase since they took the assessment as 8th graders. So, you know, again, when you're looking at this one document, we're just looking at attainment, but we actually have some success in terms of making gains with the same group of students over time. For elementary students, and now we're looking at different cohorts of students, 31% are at proficient or advanced levels, which is the same as last year. Reading achievement in the middle school improved by 4 percentage points from last year. And high school reading did experience a dip from last year by 5 percentage points. And then I know a question in the past has been about the performance of our economically disadvantaged students and students with disabilities. The district data indicates that we've made significant gap gains for both our economically disadvantaged students and students with disabilities in the area of math. We're up 8.3 percentage points compared to the state with only 4.3, and 6.1 percentage points compared to the state at 1.7 respectively, while our reading gap still remains steady for those subgroups. So again, we're really closing the gap in some areas, and we have some work to do with reading. In the past, when I brought your MAP data forward, I talked about areas for further improvement. What I've had listed here is fairly similar to what I shared with you at that time. We need to continue to focus on our well-articulated literacy curriculum for both reading and writing. We are currently in the process of developing common assessments that are mirroring the rigor of Smarter Balanced, our new assessment that's going to replace the WKCE after next school year. And that's going to have increased rigor, and it also will allow our students to apply skills in different contexts. I know that when you look at this one piece of data, it looks like our students may not be performing well in the area of reading, yet we have other data points that show our students are performing well in reading, and I think it's important about the context and allowing our students to experience different applications of what their skill sets are in different contexts of tests. So they might not do well on this particular assessment, but on other assessments they are. So we need to help our students be better successful or more successful with the Smart Balance coming forward. Early intervention efforts continue to be an area of focus, and also professional development. In our professional development for next school year, we're focusing on high impact instructional strategies that are going to support our teachers in their implementation of the Common Core. And also, when I look at the gap gains we're making, I think it's important to continue professional development on culturally responsive practices for our staff in the area of reading. So how can we help our students be more successful with reading in terms of their socioeconomic status, for example? So if you turn the page, the next steps with this data, we have, this is the month of May, so we're starting to enter, actually this Wednesday we'll start to have data analysis on our PLC Wednesdays. So each individual building level is going to analyze their strengths and areas for growth, and then determine SMART goals for next school year. These results, along with other data, will be used to calculate those new school accountability report cards that will come again later this year. And the student achievement portion of the report card uses 3 years of WKC data based on these new NAEP cut scores or college and career readiness expectations. And lastly, on Friday afternoon, Crystal and I received an email from VARC, which is the Value Added Research Center, and they are hosting a workshop next week on Friday. And they invited us to share our school improvement efforts with other districts across the state, because according to their value added data, our elementary math and our middle school reading data shows great value added when we compare ourselves to other schools across the state. So that's really exciting. So I'll stop there and let you ask questions.
I don't see the enthusiasm.
I know.
It's nothing we asked for or applied for. They reached out to us based on the data that they were looking at. So
yeah, I would say this.
Pretty
I think
excited
this is
about
their
that.
3rd or 4th annual workshop, and each year I think I've had the opportunity to attend, even when I was in my last district, and Crystal as well. And they only bring in school districts to share who are experiencing the most value added. And the idea of the conference is to share what strategies are they using for other districts to learn from.
2 questions. The first one, I'll go with one question. Are these other ones, the language, arts, science, and social studies, are they going to be re-gauged? So like in a year, all of a sudden we're going to see a huge dip there?
No, it's a good question. Right now, the efforts with reading and math is really in alignment with the ESEA, or Elementary and Secondary Education Act, No Child Left Behind. And the focus has been on just reading and math nationally. I don't anticipate the state making any adjustments to language, arts, science, or social studies in the near future. Sorry. Although science just released the next generation science standards,
Yeah.
and so it's
Now,
It's
I'm
coming.
gonna probably give you a lot of questions a
Great
little
segue.
further now, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait and ask a lot of questions on, not that many, just questions in a little bit on that.
Okay.
But, so, and again, but then, lots of green on here, and it is pretty, obviously, though, we start to ask the questions about the areas where, you know, there's things that are going on, obviously, in our younger grades. And, again, where are we gonna be able to get that so that, you know, obviously we can work with a disadvantage, but all the students to pull
Absolutely.
those up? I mean, what other things are we doing? I think you highlighted them, could you just emphasize a little more on that?
Sure. It speaks so much to the importance of early intervention.
Yes.
And the district has been engaged in that over the course of the past few years. And what you're not seeing tonight is you're not seeing the percentage of students that are minimal, which is the lowest category, and the percentage that's basic. What I noted with each of these grade levels, and keep in mind they combine all 4 of our elementary schools that have assessed. So some cases, the data will be very different for one building that would maybe not be yellow or red here. But when you combine them all together, it
Yeah.
gives us that story of our district. I lost where I was going with that.
Early intervention.
Thank you. With the early intervention, what we're seeing in the data when we look at each building level in reading is that the number of kids that are scoring minimal is decreasing over time. And I think that speaks to our early intervention efforts. We're starting to get more kids moving up into that, what we call the yellow range, which is represented here. And one thing I think that community members, even teachers, don't understand about the WKC is if Jim scores proficient as a 3rd grader, let's say in the area of reading, he has to make a certain amount of growth the following year as a 4th grader to stay in that category. So when we have students moving from minimal to proficient, or even minimal to basic, they have to make that equitable growth and on top of that grow even more to get into the next category. So we are starting to see movement based on our efforts, but it's not going to be reflected in our attainment data. So that's why I highlighted the growth, that we are seeing growth with the same cohort of students over time. They're just not hitting those benchmarks yet.
Is it, again, I mean, it's just a nature that they're starting off before they even enter our door, it's at such lower levels?
I mean, we you know, as we understand about education, that the variables of socioeconomic status, background experience, those things play a factor as students come into our schools, and then we need to catch them with our data instantaneously and start gearing our instruction to their personalized needs to make sure that they're closing the gap early on. I think another issue to speak of, because WKC is not really a measurement of individuals as much as it is a measurement of the curriculum.
Sure.
We can see the trend here in Baraboo has been that the curriculum for reading has not been where it needs to be. And that's been a lot of our efforts over the past 2 years, is designing that ship and making sure it's tight and everybody has a well-articulated plan for delivering their instruction with the support of the literacy coaches that on their instructional strategies.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about the alignment of the curriculum over the last year, there's been just an amazing progress, K-12 actually,
Yeah.
in the district, and that will be reflected in those test scores.
Yeah, and I just want to say, again, context, because the kids took this assessment October, November. And I think back to last year, what we were doing in terms of development of curriculum. We spent the whole year last year, up until May, designing what are those essential learning targets for literacy
Sure.
K-12. And so this is our first year of implementing that new ship, so to speak. And the kids were assessed right away in October. So we're not seeing the reflection of our curriculum efforts yet in this particular data.
When did they take the latest set of maps?
Well, actually, they're currently map testing right now.
So
And so I'll have
sometime
spring data soon for you.
Pretty soon we'll have that data to say, you know, this is where they were in the snapshot at the one shot. Now, this is what's happened over the course of our educational year. Okay, so we'll be looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do think it is extremely significant to include what you have shared with us, Lori, that at the level of most need, there has been great improvement.
Mhm.
I think that is indicative of what we're all been trying to do to support the efforts. And we know the earlier we can arrive, the earlier we can provide resources, the better that achievement will be. And I believe that includes 4K, as we've indicated previously, Jim, and some of the research that has been shared with us. Those young people who were able to bring in at 4K have a much higher probability of doing well in improving from where they were to where we hope them to be.
Absolutely.
So the validation of how all these pieces fit together, from my perspective, as a former educator and a board member, make an awful lot of sense. And thank you for all of that.
Well, I think I would be remiss too to not point out the hard efforts that our teachers are putting forward, and this data means a lot to them. And it can be deflating when they see that they don't get, where they want to be, when they do have other data points that show a different story at times. So we talk to them about the context of the data, so they reflect on where were we at this point in the year, where are we now, and we're excited to bring forward that spring data. But this is a hard-working staff, and we're asking a lot of them, and they're stepping up and doing that work.
Well, now, if they're taking the test now, we have over a month of school left. So are there questions on this test that maybe the teachers haven't even covered yet?
The current test that they're taking, Ed?
Yeah.
The MAP test? The MAP test is actually not a grade level test like the WKC is a grade level test. MAP test is a skill test, and it's computer adaptive, so it adjusts. So if I pick on Jim again, he sits down as a third grader to start taking the test. They'll start at a third grade level, and then they'll start giving him questions, and as he keeps getting them right, it goes harder and harder and harder. So when you watch the students take the test, they start out really ambitious, and you start to see the drain, like this is really getting hard over time. And if he starts getting questions wrong, then it bounces down, and it keeps doing this until it finds where he is for each strand of our standards.
Oh.
So it's not a true, it's more skill focused than it is a grade level test. We have kids in third grade who take the test that are performing at an 8th grade level, for example.
The one thing that we do try to do is be consistent with our testing windows from year to year, so that we do have the same intervals between those
Yep.
testing periods.
Great.
It'd be interesting to see how the board does with that test.
There is a TV show.
We
There's a
can
TV
definitely
show.
arrange that. That wouldn't cost us any money. It just costs you your time. But it would be interesting. It could be a nice little friendly competition.
It'd have to be,
Just tune
Why?
in to Are
As
You
long as there's
Smarter
a
Than a
public
Fifth
record
Grader?
request on
Well, some of us are still working on our GED.
I think as a board, I would be proud of the progress we've been making, and again, I just want to highlight the fact that the Value Add Research Center is asking us to share. That's a significant action. So
Ms. Miller, as long as you're up,
yes,
and with the help of Ms. Mesmer.
Ms. Mesmer,
who's
yes.
Also with us tonight, we have the K-12 Next Dr. Mesmer. We have the K-12 Next Generation Science Coach.
yes. So I'm going to let Karen start the conversation.
Okay, so I know that you all are familiar with the Common Core, and you've just heard from Lori about all the work that's been done over the last couple of years with literacy and how much effort it took to get all of this in place. Well, last month, the Next Generation Science Standards were released, and these standards are very different than anything anyone in science education has ever seen. So not only are there particular topics that you are to be teaching, disciplinary core ideas they call them, you are also going to be teaching science practices, the way science is done, and cross-cutting concepts. So kids are going to have to develop models, they're going to have to analyze data, they're going to have to communicate what they've learned, they're going to have to look for patterns in the data. They're going to have to be taught all of those things because they're also going to be tested and assessed on the science practices and the cross-cutting concepts, not just what they learn about science facts. So these are very different. K through 5, the topics are specific grade level. 6 through 8, they're banded. So these are the topics you can teach anywhere 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. 9 through 12, they're also grade banded. You teach these particular topics, but anywhere throughout the 9 through 12 grades. So there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done. First of all, we're going to need to figure out what's going to be taught in what particular grade for middle school and high school. And then we're going to have to train teachers to teach the way that the standards ask them to teach. There are particular science practices that are tied to specific core ideas and tied to different cross-cutting concepts. What do you do with those? They're performance expectations for students to be able to do. And the assessments statewide are expected to change from WKCE with just multiple choice tests to much more problem solving, where students are going to have to explain their answers much more than they've been doing in the past. So I propose to Lori and Crystal that I teach part-time next year and continue the year after and the year after, because this is recommended to be a 3 to 5 year process, and then be the next generation science coach for the district, so that all of this can happen. I would train teachers and do professional development on how to teach this particular way, because it is what I do in my classroom. When I look at the standards, the science practices, and the cross-cutting concepts, as well as the disciplinary core ideas, it's the way I've been teaching for quite a few years. So I feel that I can do that. I would look for resources that the district could use that were developed by universities, research-based, and we do a lot of that in middle school. We have not had texts since, for life science, 1990, I think was our last text, and 95 for earth science, I think the 80s for 6th grade. We've developed all of our own materials.
Yes,
so
to be clear, we haven't been using those old
No. We have not. Those are just by the wayside. But
Yeah.
we've developed all of the curricula that we use in middle school. So I know it's possible to be done, at least at the middle school level. We've written a lot of things. We've taken things from universities and modified them so that we can use them. We'll have to figure out what to do with elementary. We'll have to figure out what to do with high school. But I would do a lot of this work and figure out how this is to be done. They're brand new. Everybody's kind of trying to figure this all out. I've been in lots of websites and meetings with people discussing what they're going to be doing in different districts.
And just to be clear, the next generation science standards is like the comparable to the Common Core for English Language Arts and Math. That's just that Common Core is a trademark name. So they call this the next generation science standards. So it's the same, but for science. And as you are aware, the coaching model has been very effective for us as a district. And so it seems natural with our continuous school improvement efforts that we would consider a K-12 science coach with this new initiative that's coming forward, because as Dr. Messmer is pointing out, it's going to require some significant change and support for our staff. And so we believe that that coaching model works for us to support our teachers, and it's going to be significant for our elementary staff, because our elementary teachers are certified as elementary staff, and some of them have a deep expertise in science and some don't. And so this will require some support for them. As you read probably the initiative proposal in your packet, what I am suggesting we do is I have $18,000 that have been allocated to this position out of the curriculum budget, and that would be in lieu of purchasing instructional materials. That's a very comfortable thing for us to do. We don't have a need outside of this role for those dollars. This would allow Karen to have a half-time release each day to serve in that capacity as a K-12 district-wide coach. And we would need to have the board then allow us to post and hire a 0.5 FTE for science to replace her in the classroom.
Lori, that would be up to a 0.5.
Thank you.
Because
Yes, do you want to speak to that?
The other thing
Yep.
that we want to do is guarantee that the quality of instruction continues at the middle school.
And it's not compromised
As
by
Karen has provided, and we don't want to compromise that. So we don't know yet, what we might get in terms of applicants for that part-time. But the whole concept of allowing one of our current teachers who has an expertise in this area to facilitate some of this professional development and coaching district-wide, I think is something that we should embrace. It's something she's excited about in stepping into that kind of leadership role.
And Karen is the right person for this. She's been on the leadership role with us both at the national and state level along the way with the development of these standards. So her level of expertise is unique, and we're fortunate to have her in the district. I agree with that.
I'll second it.
I'll take Mr. Nevins as a motion, I'll take the agreement by Ms. Riley as a second.
I have one question, and as we're voting, as we're discussing right now, 1 year at a time, but this is very likely, and the need is over 2 to 4 years probably.
No, we aren't setting a precedence here with all the other subjects, are we, like math,
Good question.
social studies?
Yep, good question.
That's not coming next year.
No, it's not coming next year. I think the
Should come
what
this year.
the flame that started this ed is really the shift in having new set of standards that's going to require this kind of support. So we don't have those new standards coming anytime in the near future with social studies, as I understand it, because politically there aren't dollars to fund that work right now. So.
And I think
Well, go
science
ahead.
is so process oriented
Yes.
too. It's just not a matter of, you know, math is more sequential. Yes, there's problem solving, but I think the level of comfort, even when you talk about our elementary teachers, they'll be the first to tell you that it's not necessarily a content area that they feel comfortable teaching. And Karen has helped in the past when we've had some transition issues between levels to try to align that curriculum and sort out some of those issues. Really takes somebody with that level of understanding of not only the content area, but the processes that she alluded to make it effective.
Well, and I mean, I think we can certainly even look at our math and the success we've had there. And I don't know if I'd be inaccurate in saying that many elementary school teachers statewide are very uncomfortable with mathematics, yet we've been able to be very successful with that model. And I
With the
could-
math coaching model.
with the math coaching, and I could see that this is obviously the way that we need to go with science. We can't say, here, go do it. Show me how to do it, what I need to do. Because not only is it a sea change with how we're teaching it, they need to know how to teach it.
And we're lucky Karen is the ideal person.
Dr. Messer will do a tremendous job, I'm sure.
We should reiterate that Dr. Mesmer is the ideal candidate because her master's and her doctorate are in this specific area of curriculum development and instruction. So we're talking about expertise not only in content, but expertise in curriculum development, instruction, and implementation.
Mr. Mortimer, do you have anything you wanted to add?
I was just gonna say, when I first read that, I'm thinking, that's your job, curriculum coordinator's job. I probably read it half a dozen times, but now after hearing Dr. Mesmer talk, maybe there's more time involved than what maybe I think.
Yeah.
And I guess it's too bad we don't lose her out of the classroom.
Absolutely. I only get good things. I don't share that with her enough, but I only hear good things from our parents and students about her instruction.
Well, I look around this room and about every other one of you have had your kids.
But this will help build capacity in our other classrooms
Get out
and
before
have
my
that
second
level.
one.
You too.
Well, I'm just glad that we can count, not take for granted, but count on your services for the next 3 years. So I'm very happy to hear that commitment and your excitement for this role. And unless there's any further board discussion, I'd entertain a motion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We start playing tomorrow.
Okay.
Rome wasn't built in days.
Brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled Personnel Recommendations. I am aware of one resignation that was provided in your board packet. That is for Rebecca Walgenbach, Middle School Language Arts. Entertaining a motion to approve that resignation, to accept it.
Move to approve the resignation.
Second.
Motion by Mearing, seconded by Riley. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion approved, resignation accepted. I'm not aware of any approval of retirements. I am not aware of any approval of hires. I am, however, aware of a posting that was created by the acceptance of the resignation in the previous action, so I would entertain a motion for the posting for the middle school language arts position.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Riley, seconded by Mearing. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to approval of long-term subs, which I'm not aware of any. And that brings us to the approval request for additional coaches. We provided background in your board packet. We have Activities Director, Mr. Andres, here for any and all questions, if there are any. This is for an additional coach for boys and girls cross country and boys and girls swimming.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by McNevin, seconded by Vidro. Any discussion?
We do have a comparison in the conference that I thought I was gonna share with you, but I'm still having problems with the settings. So, Aaron, maybe that you could send out to the board for tomorrow.
Which just shows that, this is comparable.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to ask a question, and I see the criteria you used to determine which sports would require this kind, the additional assistance. I recall that we did approve several meetings ago, the girls softball, a cut of the coach's pay in order to get an assistant, to pay an assistant. Would that sport, would that have qualified with this set of criteria?
No, the softball cut was a head coach eager to have a varsity assistant.
Mm-hmm.
This criteria puts a coach at each level. Softball currently already has a coach at each level at least.
Mm-hmm.
If you know, and I can share with you the comparables tomorrow, but when you look at comparables, most of the districts have a varsity assistant coach plus a coach at each level, so say JV and freshman.
In these sports?
In a majority of sports, yeah. And in swimming, for example, we have a varsity, we have a JV, and we've had one coach that manages both, which kind of limits us schedule-wise a little bit and has been very limiting practice-wise. And so they pursued volunteers, and which is not a great model in terms of accountability, consistency, and controlling the instruction. So we're hoping to have a paid person for the 2 cross countries and the 2 swimming, so that we can have one at each level and to provide that sort of differentiated instruction in terms of being able to work with the elite, the middle, the beginners, and make sure they're all trained appropriately and they're safe.
This request then is an ongoing, I mean, this isn't.
Yeah, I'd
short-term.
like to add those 4 positions to the extracurricular package.
Having a motion by Mr. McNevin, seconded by Mr. Vidro. Any further discussion of the addition of the boys and girls cross-country coaches, boys and girls swimming coaches? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to new business, which, as long as Mr. Andres is here, if there's anybody that has any questions, we were presented in our board packet the WIAA agreement for 2013-14. Bottom line is that it costs us $1,150 to be part of the WIAA. Entertain a motion for the acceptance of that agreement.
Move to approve the acceptance of the agreement.
Application agreement.
Application
Is there a second?
of the senior high membership.
Second.
Motion by Mearing, seconded by Vidro. Any discussion and or questions? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to the revised teacher job description. Thank you, Aaron, for being with us. Brings us to the portion of the agenda for the teacher job description, the revised teacher job description, which is something that came out of the personnel committee of last week. Entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Vidro, seconded by Riley for the revised teacher job description. Any discussion?
Just want, if we might have, a just brief summary of the process that was provided at the personnel meeting, shared with the entire board.
You're
Lori,
talking
you
to
wanna go
Mr.
through
Hubble?
that? Absolutely. Well, Lori really took the head on the job description, so do you want to go through what you did, Lori, with?
Well, sure, it's been a process. I think we started, I'm gonna look at Crystal, we started
Yeah.
last year.
At least a year of process.
Teresa Lean our instructional facilitator, had started to draft or take our existing job description and suggest some changes. And then we worked with a human resource consultant to do some surveys of our staff and administrators on what should be included in the job description, so that has added to this. And then as we gear up for educator effectiveness, the other thing we need to keep in mind is that we probably want to have a job description that mirrors the Danielson framework, which is our evaluation model. And so therefore, when you look at the position summary, you'll note that the 4 domains of planning and preparation, managing the classroom environment, instruction, and professional responsibilities are represented, and then that's how we broke out the essential job functions.
Seems to me absolutely critical that a job description
Matches
and a
how
job
we evaluate.
evaluation
Yep.
fit together hand in hand.
Correct.
And from the personnel committee's point of view, I think that's what this was able to accomplish.
It was
Correct.
also discussed at the building level
Yes.
with
And
each
with
school.
teachers and, right.
Yep. So it's been a process with a lot of different steps.
Thank you.
Further questions, comments? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Our next 2 agenda items involve discussion that is potentially conflict of interest with several of our board members who have spouses that work within the district. That be the discussion of the dental insurance carrier and the closed session. So I will allow those lucky board members to have a
Wait
home
up there.
if they want to go outside and enjoy the weather. Yes.
You don't have
Just give me a show.
Session.
I don't think so.
There's nothing else.
And there's nothing, I don't think we're gonna have anything to act on. Noting that board member Mr. Cummings and board member Mr. Mortimer have exited the meeting, I'd like to move to new business, approval of a recommendation of dental insurance carriers. This comes out of the Personnel Committee meeting on the 29th of April. The Personnel Committee met and discussed the potential of switching from and the advantages to the district of switching from WEA Trust for our dental insurance carrier to Delta Dental. It is the recommendation of the committee that we switch to Delta Dental. There has been communications put out by the district in regards to the potential change, if the board were to act upon it tonight, and also spelling out the timeline for that, along with the comparisons for the carriers that we looked at. So that having been said, I would entertain a motion for the district to switch dental carriers from WEA Trust to Delta Dental.
I think one thing that should be noted is the fact that if this had resulted in a negative impact to our employees, there would have been more of a discussion. But as you can see, it's mutually beneficial for the district and the employees to make this change, not only in terms of the financial costs, but in terms of the actual benefits that are provided and the number of providers in our area.
Move to approve. Second.
Motioned by McNevin, seconded by Vedro. Any further discussion?
Just wanted to reiterate what Dr. Ritzenthaler has indicated, that this is a mutually beneficial shift for our educational community, and that our educational community was engaged in the process. To arrive at this, I want to acknowledge that there may have been some communication glitches due to when certain meetings were going on, and I want to acknowledge some concerns that were raised about that we should be attuned to. but it does not impact the end result that this is a mutually beneficial shift for all of our community, our educational community.
Okay, appreciate that clarification from Mr. Vedro. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Note the absence of Mr. Cummings and Mr. Mortimer. I would thus now entertain a motion to go into executive closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for those that remain. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 2 minutes?